So Becky, Claire, they gave her a live bunny to pet while she was having surgery. I'm confused.
Well, I mean, I'm glad it wasn't a live bunny. She had my 25-year-old had Lasix this morning, and they do give you a bunny, but it appears it was luckily a stuffed bunny
Mm.
that I'm sure has seen a lot of angst in that room from hearing
Yeah.
about it. But all good and taking a long nap. I
Have you
called it a Valium nap.
She didn't pull its ears
have you
clean
done
off,
this,
did she?
Becky? Have you had Lasix?
No. And can I tell you what kind of hurts my feelings?
Please.
I'm now of an age where they really won't do it.
Oh, man.
How about
Well,
that?
on that sad note, since Becky's younger than you and me, John, on that sad note, let's get this show going.
But you guys couldn't do it either.
No, that's the sad story, yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Becky.
Welcome aboard Lifelines with David and John, your guide to charting the transformative course of crisis intervention and the game-changing 988 Lifeline.
So, welcome back to Lifelines, the 988 podcast with David and John. We're coming to you straight from the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, and our sponsor, Behavioral Health Link. And we've got a fire episode today. Our guest is a longtime friend and national, international leader. We're going to today, Becky, we're going to unpack the rich history of crisis services and look to the future. And John Draper, you're going to tell us about this amazing guest we've got today.
No, I'm happy to do it. Becky Stoll is the Senior VP of Crisis Services at Centerstone with more than 3 decades of experience in operating, consulting, training, and speaking about crisis services. Whether it's disaster mental health or suicide prevention or crisis services, she oversees all of Centerstone's multi-state crisis services footprint and their national 988 operations. And David and I have had the pleasure of working with you, Becky, so closely for so long. I'm just wondering why we're not spending Thanksgiving together.
I know, and I'm looking at that. I really like that dress. That was
Becky,
that's a staple in the closet, man.
Becky, you can't wear this dress on this date. This was like 2 weeks before the election.
I know.
And
What was I thinking?
Obama was still in the White House, Becky, and you show up in this Republican Tennessee red dress. What's going on?
I know. It was, I was at Dillard's and I tried it on and it fit like a glove. And I let fashion overtake my brain and did not give it a thought until
That's
later.
the first thought I had. And it was a great dress, Becky, but from 2016 to the picture on the right, which is just last week, we're going to cover all that today's podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe or wherever you follow us on your podcast. But we usually start these, Becky, with a little bit about our guest. Maybe tell, John and I know you pretty well, but tell our audience something that maybe people wouldn't know about you, so a personal interest or.
Yeah, a couple of things. I stumbled into working in mental health because I was bartending in undergrad and looking, at a career in law, and decided pretty quickly that wasn't for me. And one of my regular customers was someone who was an LCSW, which I didn't know what that meant at the time. And she used to come in pretty regularly. And when she found out I'd switched my major to psychology, she was like, "Hey, do you want to come work on the unit I run? Do you want to come and work Saturdays and Sundays, noon to midnight?" How about that shit?
It kind of makes sense that you would jump from bartending to counseling work.
No, it was definitely an addition. It wasn't a jump. I was hustling trying to get through undergrad. And I worked Saturday and Sunday, noon to midnight as a single person, a 21-year-old single person. And that's where I got the bug. I really if you've never worked, one, everybody should do service industry work. That's just a plug.
I was just wondering if you were the first in that, was it an award or whatever to be counseling people and serving them drinks at the same time?
I wish. I mean, this was the 80s, so an inpatient stay would be like 3 months for an acute stay. There was no managed care, none. I mean, there was no managed care. This was the 80s. And I just fell in love with it. It was really exciting to see. I learned more doing those jobs in an inpatient psych unit. By the time I left there, I was the director of admissions, social work, utilization management, and I had the front desk staff. And I just learned a lot. And I knew I liked kind of a crisis situation, stabilize it, move them on. I knew when I was in school that I did not want to be a therapist. I don't have the personality for that. I was getting my LCSW. You know, I did my hours once I graduated. I was pregnant with my daughter at the time when I was studying for my licensure. But I knew I didn't want to be a therapist. And when I had the opportunity to work in an inpatient unit and see really people at their worst, at their illest, that's where the bug bit me. So it bit me a long time ago. And then I've just fortunately been able to stay in that lane, and not have to do something, you know, too far administrative, or try to provide therapy, which I don't think I would be very good at.
So Becky, but you didn't have the people in the back bring you food like you did when you were the bartender.
That's right. I mean, I've been saying this a lot lately when we're talking about acculturation. You know, and that's key. Like, you can train people all day long on the front end when you're onboarding, but if they get to the team or the unit or the whatever, and that's not really the way it is, you know, you're kind of in the water at that point. And it really, and I said that one day, and it just flashed me back to being 21, working at a very busy restaurant bar that was right by Vanderbilt University's football stadium.
What was it, Becky?
It was called the Cooker.
Yeah, I remember the Cooker, of course.
Yeah. And so great food, you know, had a very big bar presence. It was right by Vanderbilt, so it was always busy. And I was told, like, do not eat behind the bar. You're not allowed to eat behind the bar. If I catch you eating behind the bar, like, you're in big doo-doo. Do not eat behind the bar. And, I mean, I went in there 2 or 3 days, and they were like, hey, my coworkers were like, hey, we're sending a 6-pack back to the cooks, and they're going to send us some cheese sticks and hot wings. And I was like, what? Like, we're not supposed to do that. But yeah, what I found out was, of course we did that. It was really hot back on the cook line. And then when it was super busy, we would send them beer, and we got apps.
Yeah, there'd be something terribly wrong with you if you were really trying to sneak food from the unit, though. I mean,
like, I don't know. Our food was pretty decent, but yeah, no.
So Becky, we like to start with a segment we call the super fan. So, John, I am an emerging super fan. I'm not proud of it, Becky, but I'm a super fan of UFC. I'm going to my first fight in the Sphere.
My son-in-law likes UFC. Yeah.
John, what are you a super fan of? John, you're a super fan of what?
Well, let's see. I mean, of course, it's football season, and I'm also a University of Texas football fan, so I'm going to get to see them in Austin with Georgia playing. So that's going to be really exciting for me.
So, Becky, John and I are going to take a stab, and we both have a blank piece of paper here. I'm just going to write down.
You'll never get it.
We're going to guess what you're a super fan of. So, John, let's do it.
Oh, man, I've got so many guesses here. All right.
Okay, I got mine. I'm ready. John, you show yours first.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's see it. Reading books. That's very boring, John. Is that a super?
That's true. It's not what I'm saying, but yes, I'm a ferocious reader.
You are
super fan. What's the genre, Becky?
I use my OCD for good. I alternate fiction, nonfiction. I alternate. I pop back and forth. Yeah. Intentionally, I pop back and forth.
John, was this a shot in the dark, or you see Becky with a book in her hands a lot?
Well, here's what happens: is like whenever I see her at conferences, I say, "So, what do you want to after we eat? Let's go grab a drink." She says, "No, I got to go upstairs and read." So there it is.
All right, so I got mine. Becky, I say you're a super fan of Adele.
Oh, listen. Well, those are both, you guys are both right, but that's not what I was going to say. But I was lucky enough to see her in
It says Las
Vegas.
Vegas right here.
But isn't that amazing that David did that in just a couple of seconds?
I know,
So-
golly, I saw him feverishly.
Yeah.
Becky, how was that? How was that concert?
I wept openly. And if you get the chance, she has 10 shows left in Vegas, and I'm not
Okay.
kidding. It's a very intimate setting at Caesar's Palace, and the screens are ginormous. She's super funny, but her singing in the stage production, last night I looked to see about tickets again. Like maybe I should go see her one more time because she's going to be gone for years.
Yeah, for a long time. But
So
let me
what
get
are you
to
going
My
to say?
passion.
Yeah, we
I'm
want to hear
thinking
you.
Nashville Predators is the other one that I was thinking for you.
So I do this every night. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a fantasy football person.
No, I don't fantasy football. This is Madden. And I play Madden every single night. And I do it on the iPad. I don't have an Xbox or all those fancy things. So I do it on my iPad. And I'm in a
Come
league.
on.
I've been with the same guys in a league. I'm the only female on this team. And we've been together for a really long time. And when I met them, they were in high school, and I've been with them through their college, and now they're kind of in their early lives. And that's my boy. Like we're tight.
You are the Madam of Madden then.
I'm the madam of yeah, absolutely. And it's I love professional sports, but I do it every night before I go to bed. So John, I read and then I play Madden.
Mm-hmm.
I love it,
Special
Becky.
time
I
of
love
year
it.
for us football lovers, for sure.
But listen, go see Adele if you get the opportunity. Her songs it was unbelievable.
It's amazing.
So this hour is flying by, John. Let's get a quick update from our sponsor, John. Behavioral Health Link is behind the program and bringing Becky to us today. So tell us about.
Happy to do that. You know, David, it's just so much fun having our buddy Becky with us today. And Becky, Centerstone, and BHL are all about coordinating care across systems to make sure that no one in crisis gets lost when they need support the most. And that's why the BHL platform's care traffic control technology is essential for supporting a reliable infrastructure for your community's crisis services. Utilizing innovative features grounded in evidence-based care, the BHL platform offers a 988-ready crisis contact center solution, as well as providing GPS-enabled mobile crisis dispatch, outpatient referral and scheduling, real-time bed tracking, and follow-up assistance to assure that your people in crisis are safe, stable, and connected to ongoing care. It's not just software. It's a lifeline for those in behavioral health crisis. So to learn more about the BHL platform, David, Becky, we're just going to urge everybody to go to that behavioralhealthlink.com site and check it out for yourselves.
So thanks so much, John. Becky, we have a segment we call the good news. And the good news for the week is we had this great meeting in Washington, D.C. that SAMHSA pulled together as it's driving forward a reboot of the national guidelines for behavioral health crisis care, reflecting on the era of 988 and the new administration. Becky, we all got a chance. You were one of the speakers there. What were your thoughts of the event week before last now?
Yeah, I'm so excited that we're going to take a document, that came out 4 years ago, and really build on that. 988 wasn't born yet, so I think to take those kind of foundational blocks and see this as an ongoing journey and not just something got turned in and got an A and moved on. So I couldn't be more thrilled about it. And crisis services are so different across the country. I think the more, we're kind of here and we're going to try to keep getting here. And, we may never get as good as that because it is different, rural, urban, tribal, frontier. We have all these different things. But I think this document or the documents that are going to be released at the end of the year are going to help give some more guidance and some more standardization around what we mean when we say fill in the blank when it comes to that crisis space. So I can't wait to see it, promote it, talk about it,
Yeah.
And really see that thing kind of get folded into all the work that's happening across the country.
Yeah, we'll all be ambassadors for that document. It's something that we all care about and live and breathe every day. And we all want to see things get better. Our vision is so much bigger than where we are now. So we all have a lot to do to get to build that road to the future.
Yep.
John, Becky gave us a little bit of an inroad to her origin story, but we didn't hear exactly the jump to crisis care and disaster care.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about in listening to your origin story that and you're such a great storyteller, Becky. I have a feeling that you have a story somewhere along the line where something happened in crisis care where it did click and you said, wow, this is really special. This is me. She talked about, being counseling is not. I'm wondering if you have that story to share, or, conversely, were there moments in your trajectory in crisis care where you said, oh my God, why am I doing this?
Never. I mean, never. And I do have that moment. So I don't know. I mean, I'm very much, and you both know this because you've been around me, and I'm a creature of habit, and I like what I like, and I like familiarity. So I'm sitting right now in the only house I've ever owned.
What?
Yeah. Bought it in 1996 from an apartment, and this is the only home I've ever owned. I worked at that hospital, and I would still be there today if it didn't close. Managed care, choked it to where it was losing so much money it had to close. And we were appalled that insurance companies would want to do reviews and authorize days. I mean, we clutched our pearls and were like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when I left that location, I was going to go I had a 10-month-old baby. I was married. Claire was, 10 months old, and I just gotten my license. I studied while I was pregnant and wept openly. Look, I've wept at Adele, and I wept at the testing center when I passed my licensure exam. But I was going to go work for an insurance company. I did not want to do that. I thought I would lose my mind and be so bored. And a colleague that I knew from my time at the hospital called and was the Centerstone director of crisis services. And she called me and said, I need somebody to come run our call center. It's a program manager, and I'd been a director for a good while. She said, it's a program manager's position. I took a $2,000 pay cut, and I went and did it because I thought it was better than working for an insurance company, to be honest, where I would have made more money. And she said to me, I will never forget it. I was texting with her yesterday because she's doing therapy now, and I was giving her a referral. She said to me, you're going to get bored. You should find other things here to do.
And you haven't been bored, Becky.
I mean, and that's really how it started. She left. I ended up becoming the director. And the three buckets that I really got exposed to were crisis services, because I was running a call center. We were covering mobile crisis in 20 counties. We were a singular state at that point. Centerstone was. And then I got pulled into suicide prevention work pretty heavily in 2012 when we decided to build out a pathway. Yeah. And I got tasked to do that because I was the crisis person. We didn't have an expert. I didn't know it really. I knew some about suicide prevention, but I didn't know much. Mm-hmm. And then the disaster. So I've kind of had three buckets that have really flourished for me. And the other was disaster mental health, which we don't talk about enough. And I got into that because we had a bank robbed. This was probably in 2000. A bank got robbed in Shelbyville, Tennessee, home of the Walking Horse celebration. And a bank got robbed, and they called the call center and said, could you send somebody over? I was like,
because folks have been traumatized.
I can go do that. Sure, I can go talk to bank robbers that got robbed. And then cut, to 25 years later, just at Centerstone, I've gotten to do a lot. and I've gotten to meet people. I've gotten to go places. I've gotten to do things and help people. So it's been selfish in what richness that's brought to my life. But I also am extremely proud of all the people we've gotten to help. And I always try to remember all of this is about the mission, all of it. I was telling my staff yesterday, we have a Garrett Lee Smith grant, and it's a Garrett Lee Smith grant. It's not a GLS grant. I hate when we call it a GLS grant, and we do it all the time. And I was telling my staff, because we have one of those grants and something GLS, I was like, I really want us to think about when we talk about that. That is a young man's name.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it to be an ESS grant. My daughter was Elizabeth Sinclair Stoll when she was born.
Yeah.
I would want people to remember that. So
Becky,
I don't know. I've just been lucky.
You've made this personal impact. The three of us have traveled the world meeting colleagues from different cultures. Hey, but Becky, as we're looking at your bartender, almost insurance company, inpatient,
nine-time Super Bowl winner.
Becky, what we didn't know is this 4 years in marketing. WTF? What the heck was that about?
Yes. So I graduate school. I have a psychology degree, and I thought I was good to go with a bachelor's degree because I was not familiar really with mental health very well. And all of the women, it was all women that worked at the hospital I worked at, said, well, you've got to go to grad school. And I said, what? What? And they were like, you've got to go to grad school or you're going to eat beans the rest of your life. And I'm not bougie, but I don't want to eat beans. So I went to the UT School of Social Work and got my license. But before I was doing that, I was working, I'd left the unit doing part-time work, and I'd taken a full-time job at the hospital working on an adolescent male psych unit, acute. And then again, acute would be like 3 months. And I saved up a bunch of money so I didn't have to bartend anymore. And I was just above eating beans. And we had this woman, and she's pretty, David, I don't know if you know the Armisteds.
I don't.
George Armistead,
No.
That's a pretty affluent family here. And our marketing director had married into that family. Her name's Lydia Armistead.
Oh, I think I met her. Didn't I meet her?
You may have, John. She's beautiful, very regal.
I met her. We actually had an event there. There was a huge event.
Lydia's amazing. Yeah. And she approached me about coming to work in the marketing department. I'm telling y'all, I've stumbled into everything that's happened to me. I was like, I don't know anything about marketing. She goes, yeah, but you're personable. And I was like, okay, all right. That sounds better than working on this unit with these teenage boys who were very lovely, and they always took care of me, if a fight broke out or something. But it was a nice change, and it was a raise. And so I got assigned an area, and it was my job to go out and really just be a community partner. I mean, you guys know kind of that marketing, public relations stuff. And I got to go out and do that for several years under her guidance. And I've told this before, sometimes when I'm talking about how to tackle things from an implementation science. She said to me, you're going to have to decide if you're a negligee or a bikini. And I was like, now negligees, for those of you that are too young, you could call it a sarong. So she said, you're going to have to decide if you're like a negligee or a bikini. And I was like, I don't know what that means, Lydia. What are you talking about? And she said, you can either take your whole area and very thinly veil and go meet and know, but not really create or develop any significant relationships. Just kind of pop in and they know you're going to pop in. Or you can do an evaluation and decide, I'm going to concentrate myself in these 2 or 3 places and really build relationship. Hence, that's the bikini. And never could have gotten better advice as a young, mid-20s. And that bikini negligee, I'm definitely the bikini, because everything that I've ever been able to do has been relationship building.
Yeah.
It's not a brochure.
David, are you a negligee or bikini?
I thought about doing a series of Beckyisms before the show, and there's too many to. But I remember the lipstick on the pig, the number of Beckyisms that I've heard over the years. I will add bikini or negligee to the list. But
Doesn't it
Becky,
make sense? Doesn't
yeah,
I
it
mean
does.
it,
It
it
does.
makes
And your
total
focus
sense.
and your relationship focus makes sense. But let's
Yeah.
shift, Becky, to one of those areas of focus is disaster. And I want to bring up a photo. Becky, you and I are both from Nashville. I grew
Yep.
up there. My parents had a business in downtown Nashville. Becky, I don't have it. This I found online, but my dad used to have pictures of the Cumberland River freezing over.
Yeah.
And he had a picture of a car out on the Cumberland River. This is
Oh
up,
my gosh.
this picture's a little bit closer to Opryland, but his was
Yeah.
right downtown, right where. So, have you ever seen, Becky, the Cumberland River freeze over?
Absolutely not.
That is wild.
Well, so this happened in the 40s, John. And normally around May, this didn't happen in May, but in May, the Cumberland River is about 20 feet. It's about 20 feet. Now, in 2010, the river crested in a once in a thousand year flood that Becky, I want to hear your comments on. But the first thing we're going to do, Becky, is ask John the question. It's an over under, John. You're going to tell us the number, and Becky's going to say over under. Normally, the Cumberland River is about 20 feet or lower in May, but in May of 2010, it reached a level of how many feet, John?
20 feet or lower. So let's see. I'm going to say it was about, I'm going to guess, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 feet.
Lower.
100 feet. Becky says lower. So the Cumberland River, I'm going to show a picture. John, from this picture, it looks like 100 feet to me, but it reached a peak. Becky, do you remember by chance?
I mean, some of the places I knew, I think peaked at what, 40?
So 40 is flood level, which would be double the normal.
Right.
It reached a peak of 52 feet. That's the highest number that's been since the dam system. The TVA did a series for you Marvel fans. That's the different thing. The TVA put dams in the Cumberland River over the 50s and 60s, and this is by far and away. They called it not a 1 in 100 year event, but it's a 1 in 1,000 year event, Becky, that just kept the Opryland Hotel down for 2 years. This killed many people. This disaster didn't get enough attention, did it, Becky?
No, it didn't. And horrifying. I mean, if you live in the South, you get used to tornadoes, and those can be devastating, but they pop around like popcorn. So, John's house got totally destroyed, and mine and David's on either side are absolutely fine. And you don't have, you hope you don't have a lot of loss of life, maybe a few. And then we've had some ice storms, which really haven't usually involved death. This thing was unlike anything I had ever. I mean, I can flash right back to what that was like, and what it did to the city. It was devastating, and you don't realize what water can do.
Yeah.
Right.
So not only can you drown in it, but then it leaves, and then there are dead pigs in trees and dead cows in trees and mud and mold. I mean, mold. Oh my gosh. I mean, it can be devastating. So talk about learning something new. So in 2010, I probably felt pretty good about myself. Like, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do crisis, and I hadn't really done a lot of suicide prevention as much at that point, but I knew a good bit about it. Next thing I know, FEMA gives money to the state gives money to you, and they go run this CCP. And I'm like, don't really know what that. Oh, and then you'll have an ISP, and then you're going to get an RSP, and you're like, what does anybody know what an RSP? Like, I don't. And so we learned a whole lot, and since then we've had a lot of those. But it was devastating I mean, for at least a couple of years. I had boots on the ground for 2 years, and they really, you want to talk about relationship building, they would come back and go, oh, Miss So-and-so, her dog had a litter of puppies and she named them after some of my workers.
Mm-hmm.
That was crazy.
Things like that. And I also, David, when you show that photo, the other thing that popped into my head, part of that corridor that kind of would run from the middle up to about 12 o'clock is where we had an explosion on Christmas Day a few years ago where someone unwell.
Such a tragic
Parked a
situation.
camper on that street, broadcast for about 20 minutes for people to leave, get out. If you can hear this, you need to move away. And then he blew himself up in that. And that strip is just now getting kind of back to normal.
That was 4 years ago, Becky?
Probably 4 this Christmas.
That sounds about right.
Because Becky, it was a political. I mean, it rolled up in the. So Becky, John, you referenced a statement you heard Becky make.
Yeah, but I also want to note, Becky, you were in the community where the disaster hit, and also, head of that crisis counseling program. And and we had the same experience around 9/11 here in New York City.
Right.
And how it's one of those things that's very different about, behavioral health is that when it's a disaster that occurs, it can also affect all of the people who are providing the care too.
Yes.
Just like you as a homeowner in Nashville. And that's a very unique aspect of disaster mental health. And obviously we're on the precipice of another 9/11 observance. And there was the recent Winder, Georgia, Appalachia High School shooting.
Yeah.
We all see how disasters are affecting our everyday mental health. And you did recently say to me, and you just mentioned it a little bit earlier in this episode, something along the lines of disaster mental health not getting enough attention. But as you said earlier to me, that it's kind of the stepchild.
It is.
Of behavioral health and crisis services. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you meant by that, and what can you say about what you think the role of disaster mental health training should be in our crisis care systems and our behavioral health training?
Yeah, I think we've done a good job as an industry talking more about mental health around diagnosable mental health conditions and when life is kicking you in the head. Food and other social determinants of health and things like that. 988, like we're all in. But I have a lot of experience in this space over the course of my career. I mean, I could tell you all the entities I've done disaster work with, and it's a big list, and it's known entities. It's almost exclusively not people who are having a mental health condition. They got up, they put their pants or their dress or their whatever on, their kilt, and they went out the door and something horrible met them on the other side. And it's discombobulating. They usually don't have any kind of mental health history, in my experience. And so I describe it like shaking up a snow globe. And so people think they're going, and I've heard this so many times, I feel crazy.
Yeah.
Like I can't sleep and I'm seeing, but all the things about the horrible, horrible things. I mean, horrible things that I have heard from other people who went through these. So what happens in my experience, and I think this happens all over the country, is we just don't have enough attention to say when this goes down, boom, boom, and boom. It's so piecemeal together. It's so scattered. And it often ends up just being a cluster, and people don't get what they need. We had a shooting here, I mean, not that long ago with Covenant, where a former female student, I think she was 28, walked into the school and shot and killed 3 adults and 3 children. This was in an extremely affluent part of town. It was an extremely affluent school. And I mean, imagine that response. And what that was like. I do so much admin work. I had not done debriefs in a while. I've done thousands of them, and I had not done any in a few years. And they requested that I come in and do some for their behavioral health staff that had worked. And I kind of tried to beg off, and they asked me again, could I please come? And I tell you what, I just forgot how powerful it is.
Yeah.
It stopped me in my tracks hearing the things that they participated in and witnessed. I mean, I had to go sit in my car and just, I mean, it was rough. They had a therapy dog in with us, which was really, really comforting. But we're shortchanging people who go through these events, and they happen all day, every day. Banks are being robbed right now. Factories are having accidents. Murder suicides are happening. Weather. I mean, it's human made and natural. And I just get really, we're not doing enough.
So, Becky, the 988 infrastructure does bring hopefully some foundation for some of that for the future to elevate the great work that you and others have done. And Becky, I want to shift gears for a moment and go back to that 988 number, because your leadership was phenomenal at a time that the field got off kilter for a moment. We didn't know what the number was going to be. The act from Congress didn't specify a number. We in the field wanted it to be an important number. We had a number in mind. The FCC came out with a different number. It was pandemonium for a moment. And briefly tell us that story, Becky.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, it was, the sense was it was going to be an N11 number. And so then you're going, okay, well, what are the N numbers not being used? And I think, I mean, John, I think you and I, I'm not speaking, I think you and I and others thought it was going to be a 6.
Yeah.
I felt like it was going to be, John and I got to go meet with Chairman Pai, who was in the administration at the time. He was lovely. Our conversation was going to be this long, and he gave us so much more time, and he was so gracious. So I felt good, like we were on the road. But when it came out as a 9, I was over the moon and very excited. I thought 988 was it sounded better. I felt like it gave some parity.
Right.
Because it was a 9 number. So it kind of, and I think that worked out the best way now, because we have 988 and 911. Right. I think 611 might have been confusing. But I know there were people that, that gave them some heartburn. They felt like 611 was the way to go. I was like, potato, screw it, man. We got a number, like, let's go. The train's really coming out the door. I don't think we need to waste a lot of energy on
you were that
something.
first impetus, Becky. You sort of led the way, and we all fell in behind you. Is that the Centerstone getting that meeting with Ajit Pai, and it's just critical history as we built on that moment, and then the rest has just continued to move forward. Hey, yeah. Becky, I want to go back to, we looked at, and you were referencing the hardest times, and Nashville has been hit. But Nashville's an amazing city. I grew up there at a time when it wasn't one of the top cities in the United States. And right. I remember in the 80s, it was watching its country music crown be just ripped away by Branson, Missouri, and had a host of other challenges. And it just skyrocketed forward. So, Becky, we're going to do a quick interactive segment that we're calling Becky's Tourism Review. Becky, just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down for people who want to visit Nashville. So let's go to some key. Let's start with the Ryman Auditorium, the Mother Church of Country Music. Is this a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Becky?
It's a must see.
Absolutely.
It's a must see. It's unbelievable. There's so many events that occur there. The seating's not real comfortable because they're church pews and they're wood, but you couldn't leave the city without going into the Ryman.
Becky, my parents had a business 2 blocks from there on Commerce Street. It's on Commerce Street. And when I was growing up, and I was in downtown Nashville all the time, it was broken windows and pigeons all in it. And they restored that thing. It's tremendous.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
What about the Parthenon, Becky? Full-scale replica.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's a thumbs up. You can, and I just told somebody recently, I'm like, pay your $8 or whatever it is, and even if you don't, I mean, it's beautiful on the exterior, but if you don't want to do anything else, just trudge up to the top floor, because there's a replica or a statue of Athena
It's amazing. My girlfriend thinks it's cheesy, but
Oh,
look,
no,
our Parthenon, Becky, has the whole thing. It's not got huge holes in it like the one in Greece.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's better. That
What
Athena
about
is amazing.
Lower Broadway, Becky, the honky tonk highway? Some people see that say it's just Vegas, and others say it's the most amazing thing ever. What do you say?
If you're a tourist, for sure. Like go down, go to the Johnny Cash Museum, go into the Goo Goo. You get every country music star known to man has a bar down there. Tootsie's is probably the most famous. So tourists for sure. I mean, somebody asked me the other day that's not from here, do you ever go into Lower Broad? And I'm like, hell no. Like if you live here, you do not go into that area. But they have a nice place now right across from the Ryman called Fifth and Broad because it's at Fifth and Broad. But
Right.
all of the food places that people like to eat here have a presence there, and they have we're very good at rooftop bars.
Okay, last one, Becky. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Nashville's famous hot chicken.
Listen, I grew up here. I was born at Vanderbilt, and I came into this world a Tennessean, and I've never left. Until this became a thing, Nashville hot chicken was never a thing. It's like a made up thing, and now it is a thing, and you can go all over the country, and people have Nashville hot chicken on their menus. It's made. I mean, there was Prince's hot chicken back in the day, and that was kind of over, in a soul food
Yeah.
area part of town. But it's made up. You
It's
can
like
get it. I mean,
tacos
it's
from
super
Mexican
hot.
food.
All right, so Becky, well, let's shift to another segment that we're going to put John on the Nashville trivia spot. Let's see what John can. John, who's the most famous Nashvilleian?
Oh my gosh. Most famous. There's so many. I mean, I'm
So
going to be.
many.
Are you talking about most who's alive now?
Yep,
Who's
they are alive today. If that helps.
is it their primary residence?
Yes.
I'm going to say Blake Shelton.
Look, there are a number of people that you can mention. Taylor Swift has a place in Nashville, but
Yeah,
I'm talking about
not a primary residence.
I'm talking about the Queen. I'm talking about Dolly
Dolly.
Parton,
Dolly.
who is such an national, decade after decade after decade. So we're going to play a game, John, called That Didn't Happen, or Absolutely True, one or the other.
Okay.
And they're all Dolly. Now, Becky's going to check you. If you're wrong, Becky's going to let us know. Number one, John, Dolly Parton turned down Elvis Presley when he asked to record her hit song, I Will Always Love You. Dolly said no.
It's 100% true.
She cried all night, but the publisher wanted half the rights. She said no. She held on. She gave it to Whitney Houston without any rights to the music. And she talked about the big old mansion she has in downtown Nashville because of the money she made off of Whitney Houston's. Number two, Dolly Parton once lost a Dolly lookalike contest.
I'm going to say true to that.
It is also true. Dolly herself has. Did you know this story, Becky?
No.
She entered a contest. She entered as a joke, and she lost to a drag queen. And she said all these people were prettier than me, but she's absolutely told that. Number three, John, this did not happen, or absolutely true. Dolly Parton wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day.
Oh, I would say false to that.
She absolutely wrote those both on the same day. She wrote the latter as a farewell to her longtime mentor.
Porter.
Do you remember Porter Wagner?
Yeah.
It was her break free. I'm going solo. I've got my own wings.
But Jolene's nowhere near Porter Wagner. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
Number four, John, this didn't happen or absolutely true. Do you remember the social media meme where you put a LinkedIn picture, a Facebook picture, a Twitter picture, and a Tinder picture in a little four-piece? That meme, where you gave different aspects of your persona, came from Dolly Parton. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
It was called the Dolly Parton Challenge, and she had her Tinder one was when she was on the cover of Playboy. She put underneath, "Get you a girl who can do it all." She had a 9 to 5 picture, and all right. So number 5, John, absolutely did not happen, or it's the truth. Speaking of 9 to 5, the typewriter sound in the song 9 to 5 is actually Dolly clicking her nails. Becky, don't cheat.
I'm going to say absolutely yes.
Yeah, in fact, she wrote the song, and she was sitting there thinking, and she heard the clacking of her nails, and she said, "I'll be damned. That's a typewriter." And then the typewriter sound is her nails, and the typewriter sound is what makes the song.
Yeah.
All right, John, we're going to get to one. Absolutely true or did not happen. Dolly wrote a song called "Dumb Blonde."
I'm going to say true.
Becky?
No.
It was one of her early hits, and it
Really?
was
I've never heard of it.
It was a tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah,
the underlying message was about underestimating women. But she since said this. She said, "I'm not offended at all by all the dumb blonde jokes because I know I'm not dumb, and I also know I'm not blonde." Last one, John. No, I'll give you 2 more. Dolly Parton declined a Presidential Medal of Freedom from the U.S. government twice.
Wow. I'm going to say true.
Becky?
False.
Nope, she sure did. 2 times under the Trump administration, but her husband was ill the first time, and the second time because of COVID-19 travel restrictions. And she said if she's offered it again, she probably would decline again just because she don't want to get involved in politics. Last one, Becky, I'm going to point this one to you because I use ChatGPT to make stuff up, and this certainly seems made up, Becky.
Right,
Dolly has a secret song that's hidden in a vault in Dollywood, and it will not be opened until 2045.
That's absolutely true.
It's absolutely true. There's not one. I didn't make any up because you don't have to make any up, and I've got some more if we had time. So,
and I'll tell you this is funny. We're talking about her. So I am not pretending that she and I know each other or are BFFs, but my family does know her. My mother is one of 7 and went to high school. They all went to high school with Carl, her husband. In our family, that's just Carl. And
what?
So she has been around our family, she and Carl for, since they were all in high school, because my mom and her siblings went to high school with Carl. And when I was little, my grandmother, here in Nashville, Dolly and Carl lived maybe 2 houses up from them. So Dolly and Carl used to live in more like a residential area before they moved out to their big, huge place out in Franklin. But I will say this, one of my earliest memories as a very little girl is sitting on a porch swing at my grandmother's house, a back swing, sitting in Dolly's lap with her reading me a book, eating an orange.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I'm not going, I know Dolly Parton. My mom and my aunts and uncles are all very close with Carl, very close with Carl. And Dolly's around our family and sends flowers if somebody dies or there's all that stuff. But that is one of my earliest memories.
That's the greatest story ever, Becky.
Yeah.
Sitting in her lap with her reading you a book.
That's
eating an orange. We were eating an orange. Mm-hmm.
I'll throw one other thing in there too. Our old friend Holly George Warren, she and Dolly co-wrote a book together that came out last year, was a bestseller called Behind the Seams, which is about all of the clothes that she wears. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she says Dolly is, of course, a gem.
I don't think people really know the levels of her philanthropic stuff. She owns lots of
out of this world,
like strip malls and African American community. I don't think people quite appreciate or know. She's private about that, but I think the breadth of her philanthropic efforts are not really known to folks.
Yeah, terrific. Hey, Becky, we've just got a few minutes left for the interactive segment. John and I were interested in what you feel like has been your biggest achievement and biggest challenge in your zero suicide healthcare work.
Oh my gosh. So the biggest achievement is probably that we pay attention to it and talk about it all the time and really understand that it's just, we're never going to get, you never get there. It is a constant grind. It is a constant grind. And so that we even have that as such a main focus for us, I think is a huge win. So you just have to keep at it. You just got to keep grinding and grinding and grinding and taking data and figuring it out and learning and trying to do that. It's incredibly difficult to do this properly in health and behavioral health care systems. It's very difficult. It's really hard in community mental health. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure the staff are competent to do the work.
Right.
Because we don't really teach that in educational settings. And then the community mental health center has to take that on. But the community mental health centers themselves are such a grind. It's very difficult to spend time on training because you lose so much money when you pull people off to do trainings. It's a real burr in the saddle, and it's one we're going to have to figure out.
Becky, it has been such a joy being with you on this program today. Becky, how many cities around the world have you and John and we've had the opportunity to be in Australia, in
half a dozen?
Probably half a dozen at least.
Amsterdam, Liverpool, Oxford, Sydney.
We're talking about only exclusively overseas because we've also done a lot in America together.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Becky, this brings us to the absolutely true tales of Behavioral Health Link. We looked at the absolutely true tales of Dolly Parton, but Becky, I think back to growing up on a dirt road, and we would drive to where we lived, and we passed every day where my mom grew up. And her house was about 50 feet off the gravel road. And on the gravel road itself was the door to the storm cellar. It was an external storm cellar.
Yeah.
And I remember being afraid of tornado. You referenced a tornado earlier. I referenced a tornado. But I was guaranteed that we were safe because of two things. We had a business in downtown Nashville, and we lived in a holler on a dirt road. And tornadoes couldn't go into hollers, and they couldn't go into downtowns. They couldn't go into downtowns because of the obvious. There are these skyscrapers there that would keep them from forming, or if they did form, they would keep them, the urban areas would keep tornadoes out. And we all believed that, and at least most people did until Nashville in 98. But in 2008, I was actually in Nashville visiting my brother, and I was on the phone constantly with the Behavioral Health Link team when a tornado hit downtown Atlanta. There was the SEC championship basketball game was going on in the Georgia Dome. It hit the Georgia Dome. The game was in overtime, thankfully, or we think there would have been a significant loss of life. But it took tiles off the top of the Georgia Dome while the game's going on. And the game, they're not aware that the tornado, it smashes the CNN building. It takes hundreds of windows out of the 80-story Peachtree Plaza. And then it heads down in between the Citizens Trust Bank building and Grady Hospital. Behavioral Health Link's crisis center was on the 9th floor at that time of the Citizens Trust Bank building. And the tornado went right between. Now, in this actual photograph, John, of the tornado, it's a little bit more clear than I remember it, because at the time you couldn't quite see. This is all happening in pandemonium. The staff actually went to the basement of the building and then came back up when the tornado went by. So we had cleared for safety when the tornado was in the downtown, but as it came down the hill, the supervisor, her name was Melissa at the time, she told me, I just saw a pair of men's pants go by the 9th floor window.
Holy moly.
We had the windows blown out of vehicles. The tornado crossed the 75-85 freeway and took the top off of a large warehouse that was being converted into apartments. I've always told that there was no loss of life. I was actually researching this morning, and apparently someone did die in Olympic Park, which is just off of. But John, absolutely. BHL staff continued answering the crisis line as men's pants flew past.
Yeah, and I mean, one, it's a reminder you need to always wear a belt, David, and I'm not even sure that really happened to BHL. I know that happened in Nashville, but that really happened to BHL?
Not only did that happen, but Becky was there. Becky, you were there in '98 for the tornado in Nashville.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking about this yesterday with somebody who had moved here and experienced that. Yeah. You thought, oh, it'll never hit a downtown area. And it literally went like straight through the main corridor and took out lots of stuff. It was insane. And I was telling somebody yesterday, I worked that event and met a young man. I'll think about him sometimes. After I've met him, post event, I don't remember how long it was. If there was a cloud in the sky, he would get in his car and drive to a parking garage in downtown Nashville and find the furthest bottom floor corner he could and just sit in his car and have freak out.
Mm.
Well, and that comes, Becky, from that experience you were talking about where normal people wake up and then something happens to them.
And
so
they walk outside and next thing you know, their pants are in the air.
Yeah.
John, that brings us to, we've had no belts, bikinis, and lingerie today, but John, it's time for some plain truth.
I think it is, David. Let's make it happen.
So, John, Becky, the three of us have a lot of those opportunities we've had both in the United States, at the White House, and around the world have come from King Richard, our mentor and visionary. Becky and I were able to present him with the Visionary Leadership Award in Crisis Care in Amsterdam. And last week in the Crisis Jam, King Richard shared 3 pivotal documents that have literally reshaped the crisis call center field as we know it. These documents, 2 of which the 3 of us were fortunate enough to be able to help shape through the hard work of our very own Lifeline Steering Committee. These 3 documents became the bedrock for the transformation of the entire crisis industry. It's hard to fully appreciate the impact of these 3 pieces of paper that Richard was showing on camera yesterday, on Wednesday, but they changed everything. Back in the early 2000s, I was a member of the Georgia Suicide Prevention Coalition, and let me tell you, there was skepticism. Crisis call centers were seen as a last-ditch effort at best. Many advocates thought the funding would be better spent elsewhere. And boy, did the myths and stereotypes run rampant. Only older ladies who are lonely call crisis centers, some said. Others argued truly suicidal people don't call crisis lines, they just act. The fatalism and the ignorance were significant barriers. But those of us who worked on crisis hotlines knew differently. We were answering calls daily from people in the middle of suicide attempts, desperate and ambivalent about life. The problem? We didn't have the data to prove it, or if we did, we were written off because of conflicts of interest. It was frustrating, to say the least. And then came the breakthrough. SAMHSA-funded research from Dr. Brian Mashar at the University of Montreal, along with Dr. John Califat from Rutgers and Dr. Maddie Gould from Columbia. They silently monitored thousands of calls across centers nationwide, and their findings blew the myths out of the water. People in serious psychiatric emergencies were calling regularly, and those calls were making a difference. Many callers reported that their lives were saved because of the care that they received. However, the research also exposed some uncomfortable truths. Dr. Mashara's study found significant variability in the practices of individual call takers. Directors of crisis centers claimed they had clear policies, but the reality on the ground was often very different. For instance, while directors said self-disclosure wasn't appropriate and didn't happen, the silent monitoring showed that it happened all the time. And when done appropriately, it was one of the most incredibly effective measures in building connections with callers. But we're all human. One crisis worker, triggered by a caller confessing to child sexual abuse, actually encouraged the caller to go ahead and kill themselves. That moment was a stark reminder. We were doing vitally important work, but we needed consistent standards and procedures. By 2007, we published the Standards for Suicide Risk Assessment, and in 2010, the Policy for Helping Callers at Imminent Risk. These weren't just bureaucratic guidelines, they were lifelines. If we were going to save lives, we needed to focus on good contact, real human connection, and collaborative problem solving with the caller in control. And if we were going to activate emergency services, it had to be in partnership. If we were going to override someone's decision making, we needed to be absolutely sure it was in their best interest due to the severity of a life-threatening emergency. Those documents changed the field, and 5 years later, I saw them on the bulletin board in a crisis call center in Belfast, Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom. These policies changed how we save lives, and they remind us of what you said earlier, Becky. Behind every crisis call, there's a human being. There's actually a human being on both ends of the line, trying to do their best and sometimes changing the course of a life forever.
That's some plain truth, David. And it's also a reminder of something else you said, Becky. This work never gets boring because of the mission that we're all dedicated to accomplishing. And the evaluations that led to all of these changes really opened our eyes to ways in which we could be doing a better job to accomplish that mission. And everybody got behind those evaluations and said, let's do something about it and let's do better. And that's where all these documents came from, David. But thank you again for your plain truth, David. And we're so happy that you joined us today. Becky Stoll, you're a gem and a wonderful colleague and friend. And please do join us, all of you. Again, thank you for joining us today, but join us next week too. But for now, that's it for us today. So stay cool, stay anchored, and look out for the lifelines that we toss your way next week.